There are leaders who build companies, and then there are leaders who build people. Pam O'Connor is the kind of leader whose impact can't be measured in titles alone, though her resume is extraordinary. As the founding president and retired CEO of leading real estate companies of the world, Pam helped build what became the largest global residential real estate network in the world. She was the first woman to lead a major real estate network, and over 21 years, she united hundreds of brokerages and more than 130,000 associates across 70-plus countries. But if you talk to the people who know her best, they won't start with the scale. They'll talk about the relationships, the steadiness, the clarity, the way she made them feel stronger just by being in the room.
And I've learned along the way that brokers care about three things. They care about recruiting good agents, they care about retaining good agents, and they care about profitability.
In this episode, Pam reflects on decades of industry change, disruption, and reinvention. She shares what it takes to lead through uncertainty, why traditional brokerages are more resilient than critics assume, and how relationships, not noise, are still the foundation of lasting success. There's wisdom here, perspective, and the kind of grounded leadership that only comes from having seen it all and still believing in what's possible. If you care about the future of this industry, if you believe relationships still matter, this is a conversation you'll want to lean into. Let's dive into today's episode.
Good morning, everybody. Pam, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Darryl.
What I'd like to do, first of all, is to give an introduction for Pam Gang. And the reason why I want to make two announcements before we get to the questions. And that is, first of all, if you're an agent on this call, I want you to listen through this conversation as a leader, because even as an agent, you're still a business within the business. And every agent should look at themselves as their own business owner. So you can glean so much value if you listen that way. The second is I want you all to sit back, because Pam, her bio, her resume is incredible. And I've edited it, and it's still robust, because I think it's important you understand who's speaking today. So first of all, and Pam, I want you to please interrupt me if there's any of my facts are wrong. But from what I understand, you began your career at WSB Television in Atlanta. I think you were in your 20s back then. And then you co-owned Bryson O'Connor Public Relations in Atlanta. Then you became the CEO of All Points at about 35 years old, making you the first woman to head a major real estate network. Check that box off. When Relo purchased All Points, the board insisted that Pam be made CEO as a condition of that deal. Pam was the founding president and CEO of leading real estate companies of the world in 1997, retiring in 2018 after a 21-year tenure. You built LeadingRE into the largest global residential network of 575 brokerages, 4,000 offices, 130,000 sales associates, doing $365 billion annual. Then you're named everything. Top 25 thought leaders by NAR. Top 100 most influential people by Inman, Swanepoel's Power 200, and you received the Worldwide Employee Relocation Council Meritorious Award, President's Award, Distinguished Service Award, and ERC's Hall of Leaders in May. And you're the only sixth person ever to receive the H. Chris Coley Leadership Award from the Worldwide ERC. You've been on so many boards. People die not die, but find you so valuable. Everybody wants you on these boards: DocuSign, Moderna Ventures, University of Tennessee College of Communications, and the list goes on. So when I say, Pam, I am so excited to have you on this interview is not even saying how excited I am. Look, I'm losing the ability to speak. I'm so excited. So thanks for being here. And
The most important thing you said is the College of Communications at UT is also where Peyton Manning went. So just saying.
There you go. There you go. All right, so let's now, gang. As you think of questions you want to ask Pam, I want you to write it in the Q&A. I'm going to kick this off with my first question, Pam, and that is, when you started, if I'm not mistaken, as a secretary in the promotions department at the television station in Atlanta, I don't see how you draw a direct line from television to running the world's largest real estate network. So can you walk us through how did that happen? What pulled you into real estate from that job?
Well, when I graduated from college, in those days, women were either, even with a degree, you were either a secretary, a nun, a teacher, or a nurse. And I wasn't cut out for anything else. So I became a secretary, but my degree was in communications and broadcasting. So I went to work in a television station and had a wonderful 2 years there. I served coffee to people like Burt Reynolds and Bob Hope, and it was a wonderful job for a 21-year-old kid, but I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And I had an opportunity to go to work for a real estate network called All Points Relocation as a junior communications manager. So it was a way to get into a sort of a quasi management role. And so I took that job and worked there for about 6 years and left really because I got a new boss I wasn't crazy about. And that's when I actually went into condo development as in marketing, and then ended up with the PR firm. And then my old company, All Points, actually recruited me to come back. That's when I was the 35. So I didn't really go from secretary to CEO. Just
okay.
there was a little work along the way there. So that was it.
Now, what gave you so to be 35 years old, a woman CEO? So that took a courage, in my opinion. How was that for you? Well,
it was really, when I look back on it, it was funny. And I tell this story to a lot of young women who are, in business, because I think it's a good lesson. I certainly learned it. When I got the call from one of the board members who had been at All Points, who I'd known from, my prior time there, he offered me this job. And I said, Porter, I said, I'm 35 years old. I don't know how to be a CEO. You could do better. And I will never forget what he said to me. He said, Pam, he said, if we have faith in you, you need to have faith in yourself. And so that was really, and it was not an easy decision. I was actually, I had started a business 3 years before that with a partner, PR business. We were just starting actually to make money. We were handling a lot of real estate and hotel accounts. She had a business, had a background in hospitality. And, it was sort of like leaving a spouse. It was not an easy decision, but I agonized over it for about 3 months. And finally, they kept coming back and said, come on, do it. So I worked a deal where I said, I'll work for you for a half time and for her half time to kind of ease her through the transition. And that's what happened. So, during that 3-month period, I realized how much I missed the real estate business. I really did love it. And I didn't want to write press releases for hardware stores the rest of my life, so that's kind of how it all happened. And the rest is history, as they say. Yeah.
And thank God you said yes. So I don't know where the industry would be if you hadn't started that. So,
well, the book Lean In that Cheryl, last name isn't coming to me, everybody knows, wrote, it's about that whole lesson that women, we tend to think if we can't do something perfectly, we're letting somebody down. And the lesson in that is, just go for it, because you'll figure it out and you'll learn it along the way. And as long as your heart's in the right place and you have that commitment, it'll all work out. So that was the lesson learned, I guess.
Oh, there's a little nugget of knowledge right there. Okay, beautiful. Now, as you were the first woman to head in '85. What was that like? What were there moments where being the first felt more like a burden than a badge of honor?
No, not at all. And to be honest, Darryl, what's really funny about it is I never even thought about the fact that I was the first woman in that role. It didn't actually occur to me until several years later, when I think the old Better Homes and Gardens Network had a chief counsel, their attorney, who was then named CEO. And that's when it occurred to me, well, wait a second. That's only the second person in this role. I guess I was the first one. So I never really thought about those, believe it or not, that in those terms. And I didn't find it a burden at all. I just felt like it was an exciting new challenge, and I had great bosses, and they were supportive. So you know, I'm always a glasses half full person, so I don't see things as I don't look at the downside. Which sometimes is can be a problem, because sometimes you do need to look at that. But in general, I think it's actually it's a gift to be able to think on the positive side about most of those
You know,
challenges.
you just said something interesting that because when somebody takes something on that is unfamiliar, like it could be a new broker, a new leadership position for the agents. It could be just coming into real estate as a new agent. That there's a lot you don't know, and you know that you don't know it, and that can almost be disempowering for some people. Like they feel out of their element. Oh my gosh, they question themselves. But you just said something I wanted to grab onto, is that you looked at any of those questions that you had for yourself as a challenge, as exciting, like an inquiry of like, hey, how can I do this? Like
Mhm.
my sense is you get excited about the discovery process. Am I picking
Well,
that up right?
yes, you are, and you just said something important, which is it's important to know what you don't know. I mean, I think that's really key. And I knew that I didn't know a lot of things, and so I wasn't shy about asking questions, and hiring people around me that had skills I didn't have. And I think all of that is important, because none of us have all the answers. And even when you're doing it or have done it for many years, there's still areas where we have certain strengths and others where we're weaker, and it's important to be able to fill in around those areas.
Yeah, that's a sign of a good leader that they can. How do I articulate this? That not knowing does not make you unintelligent or a bad leader. Like owning that, okay, I don't know that. Let me inquire. Like there's a level of confidence that you actually can portray by saying, "I'm okay with that. I don't know this."
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
I think
Awesome.
most of the people I've encountered that are overly, that kind of portray that they have all the answers. Usually, there's a little bit of lack of self confidence somewhere in there that is really coming out. And so, I mean, I think most people, respect the fact that you can admit when you don't know the answers, or you made a mistake, or whatever that might be.
Hmm. That's really profound. Confidence, yeah. So confidence is not knowing everything. Confidence is accepting your strengths and your weaknesses, and the weaknesses doesn't make the strengths any less strong. Like,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah, I've always noticed that about you, Pam. That you are an extremely confident, not arrogant, confident in who you are and your commitment to making a difference and doing a great job at what you do. All right, so let me go on here. So in the 90s, everyone said the future real estate belonged to the big franchises. That they were going really strong back then. So you went this other way with LeadingRE. What did you see that others didn't, and what conviction did it take to build this unfranchise of independence?
Well, to me, one of the things you always have to do is look at what are the voids and how do you fill them. And to me, there was a void in the industry, because there were a lot of very good independent real estate companies, large and small, and they were that for a reason. They had a local brand that they really, in many cases, had for a couple of generations, and they valued that brand, and they liked the fact that they could make their own decisions. They could be very individual in the way they ran their businesses, and they wanted that. And yet at the same time, there were certain things that they didn't have. They didn't have the resources of a large organization. They didn't have the camaraderie of being in a tribe, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, there was a void there. And so it wasn't just me, but I think other people saw that as well. And when we started what later became LeadingRE, it started because about 50 of the largest independent companies left what was PHH Sendan at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and started this new network, and then acquired Relo, Genesis, some other networks, and became one large group of independents. And that was our opportunity to not just do the relocation side of things, but to really create this network of good independent companies, but to give them a lot of the resources of a franchise. So to be kind of the unfranchised, and the way, I guess, that kind of one of the tangible ways that kind of manifested itself was fairly early on. I remember saying to Steve Murray, who many of your audience will remember from Real Trends, he did the ranking of all the brokers. He was the first one to really do that back in the day. And I remember calling him, and I'd known Steve for many years. We were like brother and sister. And I said, Steve, so you rank all these franchises every year. So why can't you rank us? We're a large organization. We have, and he sort of thought about it. He says, well, I guess we could. So I started kind of aggregating our numbers, and it actually turned out we were doing more business than any one of the franchises. And so when we created bar charts and pie charts to sort of, show that, demonstrate that, that was a real turning point. Our own members realized, hey, we are powerful. We do have, some real traction in this industry, and it gave them a sense of pride. So I think, I don't mean it in a egocentric kind of way, but I think it really gave our folks the understanding that just because we don't all have the same brand name, we do share this, this organization. And I think that the energy they got from each other was probably the biggest driver of everything. We were really about bringing them together, and that was, I think, the biggest strength that we had in the long run.
Now, when you take, when you take that many brokers, and we know, there's brokers, their leadership can it's not ego, it's they're leaders with strengths. Like putting brokers together to agree on something could be a challenge, right? So I think it's
personalities. Is that what you're trying
to say?
I'm
trying to be so politically correct, and I'm not always good at that, Pam. So that's why I'm struggling here. So how did you navigate? I mean, you got 50 different personalities. How the heck did you bring that together, and how did you earn their trust for them to, let you lead them?
The thing I love about real estate is that, unlike corporate America, brokers value performance. If you've got a great agent who produces, it doesn't matter what your gender is or your sexual orientation or anything. They just value that performance. And so, that's what I had. It didn't matter that I was a woman. As long as I was doing my job and delivering good results, they appreciated that. I think the reason that maybe I did as well with them as I did, because there were a lot of different personalities and a lot of strong personalities, was I always knew that I worked for them, and they knew that, they sensed that in me. That okay. I don't mean that I was subservient in the way I dealt with them, because I wasn't. Many times I'd say, wait a second, I would, I could be as strong as any of them. But I think that they understood that I really did feel that at the end of the day, they were my bosses, and and that came across. But also, the other thing that was really important to me, and I think is something that everybody has to keep in mind, is you've got to think like your customer, and they were my customer. And I learned along the way that brokers care about three things. They care about recruiting good agents, they care about retaining good agents, and they care about profitability. And that's it. Really, at the end of the day, those three things.
Yep.
And so every initiative that we considered, every new program, everything, I kind of ran it through that lens, And if it supported them in one of those three ways, we went forward with it. If it didn't, we didn't. And that's true if you're an agent, you're dealing with your buyers and sellers, you've got to think the way they think. What's important to them? What's in it for them? And if you can do that, then I think you're always going to be aligned. And if they know that you care about them and that you're really interested in them. Somebody said to me one time, this was, we had a division luxury portfolio, and I learned a lot from some of the research we did with luxury buyers. Not that, because today, so many of the luxury buyers grew up middle class, so they have a different mentality than people who inherited money and so on. But somewhere along the line, I heard that the best words that an agent could say to a client are, I love what I do and I'd love to do it for you. And think about that. You're really expressing the passion that you have for your business and that you're good at it and that you want to be able to share that with them. And that's kind of, I think, what I'm trying to say, that if you think the way your customers think and you give them confidence that you know what you're doing and that you've got their best interests at heart, so long answer to your question, but that's why I think we just sort of got along, that they knew I respected them and that I would look out for them, and that I really, at the end of the day, knew that I worked for them. So
Yeah, that was a beautiful, perfect answer. Great. Okay. You've said that real estate is a chicken little business, like because the sky is always falling, the internet, when that came out, Zillow, third-party relocation, the 2008 crash. How did you stay calm and lead the brokerages through those waves of panic?
Well, it is I did always love to call it a chicken little business because, every time some new thing came along, it was going to put us all out of business, kind of thing.
Right, right.
But my friend Steve Harney, your friend as well, who I adored, used to always talk about, that home ownership, and he always talk about the long game, that if you really look over and the company that he started, Keeping Current Matters, really does that. They look at statistics and really show you how no matter the highs and the lows that you have in the business, that over time, real estate is always going to be a great investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of applied that to the ups and downs in the business. And there's always, when there's any big breakup or problem in the business, there's always an opportunity, embedded in there somewhere, that everybody else is either negative and you can be the positive one. I think the best way to get through those times is optimism, which sounds kind of corny, but everybody else is like singing the blues. And if you can be that optimistic, hopeful voice. And I think the other thing is just trying to give people around you certainty. So you can't always control the environment, but you can control the way you respond to it. And if you just put your head down and you work at it, and you still, prospect, and you still try to do the things, and you provide your agents with the tools they need, and you keep their spirits up, and you do what you have to do, you get through it. And people want to be around those kinds of leaders. And to me, it is leadership. That's what really gets you through those times, I think, at the end of the day. And unfortunately, sometimes I think we don't have enough of it in this business, because it worries me when I see these lawsuits and all of the really bad rap that this industry gets, when we know it's not. We know it's a wonderful business. We know what our people do for their clients every day. And nobody is telling that story the way it needs to be told, in my opinion. So
I agree with you on that. As you were sharing that about the staying positive, I guess with every yin, there's a yang. Every negative, there's another. There needs to be that positive on the other side of it, but you have to look for it. It may not be so obvious. I used to, I still say, but it's almost like the stock market. Like when the stock market goes down, you can still make money because there's a thing called buying puts. So you can buy puts when the market's going bad, you make money there, and vice versa. So yeah, all right, that's very good. All right, great stuff. And okay, let me see. My next question is, so when you were the person at the top and hundreds of independent firms are looking for your direction, how do you balance vulnerability with authority? Which is a great question, because for you, that to me, that's the irony. There's such a humbleness about you, but yet it doesn't disempower the power that you portray, because you do. You ooze with, I don't know if there's women's charisma, but you do have that. So, so how do you balance that, being vulnerable, but yet still being in charge?
Well, I am infamous for telling blonde ditch stories on myself, because I have a lot of them to tell. Leaving my hatchback up and driving out the garage, whatever it might be. No, I honestly, I think the more you can not take yourself too seriously and be able to laugh at yourself, makes you more approachable, and when people feel a connection to you, they're more apt to relate to you, and that's good on a lot of levels. If you are in a leadership role, you don't want yes people around you. You want people that will tell you the truth and tell you when things are going off course, so you can try to make those corrections. The way that I think I said it earlier, but I think confidence comes from being comfortable in your own skin and knowing what your flaws are and your strengths are. And I think about it as sometimes you have to give up control to get control. So, as an example, thinking about in real estate sales, clients today, they want to be in control. They want to know what's going on. They want you to keep them informed. They want to have the answers. They want you to, not just give them the data, but interpret it, all of that. And if you give them that control, you're actually getting control back, because they're going to trust you more. They're going to rely on you more. You're going to be the agent they're going to want to come back to and refer their friends to. So it's the same thing with this. I think the more you can show your vulnerability. I'll tell you a quick story that I heard one time, and I just love this because it illustrates it. But I knew a guy through Mike Staver, who and he was a client of Mike's, and he ran a credit union, but he was he was the CEO of this large credit union. And I think he sort of was, by his employees, they didn't really know him very well. So long story, he was at some employee event, and he told a story that he grew up very poor in some little town in West Virginia, and his family, literally, coal miners, had very little money. And so one day at school, they were putting together baskets to take to poor families for Thanksgiving. And he went to school, and the kids had been asked to bring in something for the basket. And he found this old, cake mix in the back of their cupboard, and he took it in, and, they gave it to the teacher. So a little bit later in the day, the teacher said, "We're ready to go now." And the story was they were taking one of the baskets to his home. And that was just this wake up moment for his audience to say, "Oh my gosh, this is the big boss." And he shared that story with us. And it was just that moment of vulnerability that made everybody, he says it changed their whole view of me. He said they would come up and talk to me, and it was just we had a different relationship after that. So I think and I don't mean you make up stories to just, ingratiate yourself with your folks. I don't mean that at all, but I just mean just being a little genuine and letting people, laughing at yourself, telling them some things that trouble you, that maybe are worry you, because everybody has those concerns.
Right.
And the more that you can relate to other people, the more they'll trust you, the more they'll confide in you, the more they'll, I think, find that you have credibility with them, all of that.
Yeah. So basically, being authentic and honest with people about who you are wins them over. Yeah. Love that. Love that. Okay. You always, I've got to say something. I don't know where this fits in, but this just fell in my heart, so I'm just going to share it. It's the what I just heard with the story that you said. It's the difference of being a human being versus doing human being. Like some people do it, like they put on airs, they do what they think they should portray out into the world. That's doing human being as opposed to just being. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So you've always championed the independent brokerage. Today's market, we have tech-driven consolidations. We've got Zillow, Redfin, all this other stuff that's been happening. I know you believe independents can still win, but what do they need to do given this new market with technology? And of course, Zillow being a big thing. And and I'm curious too, along with that, your thoughts on Compass and their big purchase, and how does the independent broker fit into all of these current challenges?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think anytime, and obviously you have to respect what Refkin has done. I mean, he's certainly created an empire here in a lot of ways. But, whenever you have a lot of things coming together, it's sort of like, I'm not a geologist, but when, you get all these forces that come together, there's breakage, there's stuff that happens there that creates other forces there. And I almost think that when you get too much consolidation or too much homogenization, if you want to call it that, it creates an opportunity for differentiation, and that's really what independents bring to it. I mean, they do have their own unique brands, and they have total control over the way they run their businesses. They're not, even when we've brought former franchise companies into LeadingRE, it's been an adjustment to them to get used to the idea of not having cookie cutter products that they had to use. I mean, they have things they can, pick and choose to customize for their companies, but it's very much still their special recipe kind of thing. And I think we're at a time where people like that. I think people like some choice, and I think if anything, there's still an opportunity for good independents to do that, and as long as they have, I think, more skin in the game, in the sense that it's their name on the door,
Right.
and there's a lot at stake there, that they probably are more concerned about quality of agents, good training, teaching their people, having the right tools, performing at a high level. Because I think the thing, when we talk about these big changes, and I do think we're at a point in this business of, I would call it recalibration. I think we are going through a time where there's just a real shift in the way the business is done, in terms of having to have real knowledge. I think the three things that I would love to see somebody do, I wish NAR would do it, but I don't think that's going to happen. Lobbying, which is something they do well. Somebody needs to really help solve this affordability housing crisis that we've got, and some of it's done with, there are some things you can do regulatorily, but there are other things, and I think we will get through it over time. But that's one thing. But the two things that I think could really help so much would be to create some really valid way to credential, whatever you want to call it, to separate the good agents from the mediocre agents. And I'm sorry, but we know that there are people that really know the business, know their stuff, really perform well, and others that, just kind of go through the motions. And I don't mean just studying to get a designation. I mean having some, whether it's reviews that have been validated, or doesn't even necessarily have to be time in the business, because sometimes newer agents can be great. So, but some really verifiable ways to earn some kind of a credential that would separate you from that. That would be a real help, I think, to consumers. And then the other thing would be, again, telling the story of the business. We've all seen how successful HGTV is. Well, why couldn't, instead of having shows about decor, shows about deals, to show all the things that happen with different people are really interested in real estate. Everybody is. And, to really, through podcasts or streaming shows, or just different ways that to really talk more about the way the business is done. Because if we did a better job of that, I don't think all of these lawsuits would have ever gotten the traction they had, because they really don't tell the story of the way the business actually operates and the things that agents do. It's all focused on, they make too much money. Nobody takes that commission dollar and breaks it up to where it all goes. And they think it's going in an agent's pocket, and it's not. We all know that, but nobody tells that story. So I think that those are things that we could all do. And so when you say, what could independents do? Any group of the industry that does more of those kinds of things and tries to get that story out to the public, not just beating their chest about how good they are, but really telling, trying to illustrate all of that, has a real opportunity. And just understanding that we have to do a better job of really knowing more than our clients know. I mean, the data is out there. We know that anybody can get the data. It's how you can interpret it, how you can explain it, how you can give context to it, how you can explain what that's going to mean 5 years from now in terms of their investment. Those are the things that good agents know the answers to, and they've just got to be able to, articulate that to their clients. So whether you're an independent or franchise, I don't know that it's, I don't know if there's an answer, but I think the difference with independents is the differentiation thing in terms of branding and all. But I think these other things are things that everybody in the business should be looking to do.
I think that's great that you introduced that, and awesome. I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I spoke to our New York governor about there should be a way to have agents have to prove when they renew their license how many transactions they've done or to stay in the business, to show that they're qualified to stay in. It's like a surgeon. When was the last time you had this surgery? You performed the surgery. I want somebody who just did it last week, not 10 years ago. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's see. Where's my next question? Okay.
While you're thinking,
Go ahead.
When you were talking about opportunity, Barbara Corcoran, who people now know from Shark Tank, but she came from this business, and she actually was a Relo member of ours at one time, and I always remember something she said, and she was the queen of, and she would readily admit this, of smoke and mirrors. She told me a story one time about Madonna, that they had heard a rumor that Madonna was looking for a co-op to buy in New York. And so they started putting out press releases about what Madonna would be likely to buy. And all of a sudden they get a call from her agent saying, well, you seem to know what she wants, so I guess we'll work with you. And I have a lot of other Barbara Corcoran stories, but the thing I remember her saying one time was, the opportunity is only there if you recognize it's there. And that's, in these crazy times that we're in right now, there will be new businesses. There will be new, even some of the areas of technology. There's some great products, but they're not being, I don't think, deployed in the right way in terms of really showing agents how to use them, and not just how to operate them, but here's how you use it in a business situation, how you talk about it, how you explain it, how you demonstrate it, and I think that, the tech companies who can add that people part of what they do to what the actual product does are going to be the winners, so there are opportunities all around for everybody, I believe.
I will say, I think it was a missed opportunity for NAR with the settlement, that, because my focus, Pam, has always been the agent side of things. And so what I'm noticing with our coaching members is there's still so much confusion post-settlement on how to work with buyers and buyer agency conversations. And it's still, and I'm like, I don't remember NAR ever, at least I haven't seen it, where after the settlement, they did a national campaign to tell everybody this is how we're supposed to do it. Here's the new, I mean, they came out with forms, buyer agency form, but that was it. Maybe there was a webinar here and there, but did you notice that too?
No. I think there are a lot of missed opportunities that, NAR has just gotten so large and so, they're in they do a lot of things, but during the many years they've been around, a lot of other organizations do those things. So there's a lot of redundancy. And I think if they would just kind of roll back their mission to some of those core things, I just feel like they would be a lot more effective and in the long run help themselves. But it is what it is. So
I definitely don't want to put you in a political.
I'm retired.
You don't care.
If I offend them, too bad. It's not bad. I just, I think there are too many people that have fingers in that pie that don't want to have those fingers out of that pie. That's probably the big issue there. But
I tell the big question that I always get from agents is, should I stay an NAR member? That question has been more since the settlement than ever. And I say the answer is absolutely. I believe every licensed agent should be a member of NAR. I think NAR, the organization, is incredible. It's the leadership that's messed up from the core of where we are. So that's my opinion on it, that we need some changes. But you
definitely need an organization like that in the industry. I do believe that. But like you said, I just think there's some recalibration that needs to happen there too. So
yes. Okay. We're in agreement there. I do want to say one thing, to use this as a moment. And by the way, gang, Julie, I can't see the Q&A again. I don't know why I can't find it, but everybody that's on the call, if you can start to write any questions that you want to ask Pam, and Julie's going to read it for you. So if you all jump over to that Q&A, because we're going to go there in a minute. But I do want to use this as an opportunity, Pam, to distinguish something that you said, especially for my coaching students, that they grab onto this. You were saying about the messaging of our industry that civilians, that's what I call buyers and sellers, that civilians, they don't respect us as much because of all the noise. And this is the message I've been trying to push with our coaching members that complements what you just said, is that when you look at other sales industries, we shouldn't be called salespeople, because just picking a car as an example, a car salesperson doesn't need a license to sell cars. They don't need continuing education. They don't need E&O insurance, and they don't have fiduciary to any client. Their commitment is to the sale. As realtors, real estate professionals, we have fiduciary, we have licensing, we have E&O, we have continue, and other industries like that, doctors, lawyers, financial planners. So calling us salespeople is actually not helping us either. We're closer to these other professions than we are to salespeople. And that's why I keep trying to reframe my speaking to real estate professional as opposed to salesperson.
Yeah, and I think one, in addition to everything you said, which is spot on, is that you're not selling a product in the sense of you can sell anybody any house. You're really solving a problem. That's kind of the difference. You're matching them to either, in the case of a seller, a buyer, or a buyer to a home, but any home. It's not like you have a sofa you're selling.
Right.
You're basically matching. It's more of a consultative kind of a service than it is just selling a product.
Yeah, there's so much more than, putting somebody into a house or selling their house. Yeah. So, okay, good. Now, by the way, Julie, do you have any questions in the Q&A yet?
I do indeed. I have about 7 questions.
How many?
7?
Okay, great. Let me just, I'm almost done with mine here. It's walked away from, okay, so when you retired in 2018 from LeadingRE, that was such a big part of your life. And so, again, my intro and bio, it was just the tip of the iceberg of your accomplishments, which have been amazing. What did that transition feel like? Like, what leadership maturity did it require for you to, walk away from something that was such a big part of your life?
Well, I'm a big believer in succession planning, and unfortunately, there's not enough of it in this business. I think people just figure they'll drop dead someday in a lot of cases, and I think you owe it to the people that you're serving, and your staff and everybody, to have that. So that I really was very deliberate about that. And I got some great advice from my friend Mike Staver, who said, you have to think about retirement as not what you're leaving, because I loved what I did. I could have done it forever. But you've got to think about it, what you're going to, and to think, and I have a list every day I go through. I'm busy. I said the other day, I'm supposed to be retired. Why can I not get through everything I have to do? So as long as you kind of, you have a full life and you've got a lot of interests and a lot of, whether it's volunteer or still doing a little bit of work, or family, friends, travel, whatever it might be that takes up your time, then you shouldn't ever worry about it. I hear too many people say, well, I don't know what I would do if I weren't working. Trust me, you can find things to do, and you can still even keep your hand in, but you really do want to create a way to just continue things in a really good way, so that you don't suddenly leave and leave people in the lurch, I guess is the best way to say it.
So I guess as a leader, it's how you look at it anyway, is part of that. Part of that concept is leaving behind to help the next generation to lead the organization. Like it's. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. All right.
And even for agents, there's a succession planning, curve for them too. And I see too many who, a year before they're thinking about, oh, it's time for me to retire, it's kind of too late by then. You really need to, first of all, you need to have your database and everything in good order. You got to do that all along the way. And then you've got to really, I think it's a good 3 years where you got to transition someone else into, getting them to know your clients and creating a bond there. And so that you can go off into the sunset and still be available, and still, because you have so much to give in terms of, wisdom and history and all of that, and still keep, a little bit of involvement, show up at, client events that your, successor might be having, all that kind of thing. But have fun, go to the beach, go, just enjoy your life. You've worked hard, you deserve it, so.
Well, what's interesting about that too is if you, whether you're an agent or a broker owner, that if you look at what you're building and think of the legacy you're leaving behind, that of your business, that kind of shapes some of your leadership skills, as opposed to thinking, well, this business will end when I end.
Right.
So you're building a stronger business, thinking of what you're going to leave when
You want those clients, 10, 20 years from now to be able to get a you then. Don't set that, if you don't, set that succession up in that way, it won't happen. And that's unfortunate.
The similar thinking. One of my favorite books is written by Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. And he said in that book that you should build a business as if you were going to franchise it. And if you look at it that way, you start to systemize things, you pay attention to the details differently, how you would transfer that knowledge to somebody else. So kind of along the same lines of leaving a legacy. Yeah.
Right.
So, okay. I've got rapid fire questions, and then we're going to jump to the Q&A. So one early career habit that made the biggest difference for you?
Making lists.
Making lists.
Because even if you don't have a real success, if you get through your list, you have a sense of accomplishment. And the older I get, the more likely I am to forget things. So
there's another reason to make the list. One leadership belief you had to unlearn?
That you don't have to be perfect. That you can learn things along the way, and that you can fill in the holes with other people and other things. You don't have to be perfect at everything.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. You know what? The thing that I walked away the most, I'm going to make a slogan or something, is acknowledging your weakness doesn't make your strengths weak too. So that's okay. A book every real estate leader should read.
Well, I love the book Good to Great. It's not just about real estate, but the Jim Collins book, that's still probably my favorite business book. I just think a lot of really good lessons in that. Yeah.
I'm writing that down. Good to great. Yep. Okay, good. Best advice you've ever received?
My mother taught me this at an early age, and it still applies. Don't worry about what you can't control. It's a waste of time. Just focus on what you can do something about, what you can influence.
Awesome. Your favorite expression or motto?
I use this a lot. It was something General George Patton said, when everybody's thinking alike, somebody's not thinking. And we live in a world with way too much groupthink, where you just kind of like, everybody's, they get that narrative in their heads and they're going down this road. And, you can have a general belief, but maybe there's one outlier, and that's okay, and I just wish people would just think for themselves a little bit more. I admire that when somebody who's not afraid to put up their hand and say, well, what did you think about it this way? Because that's when you learn. So
love it. Now finish this sentence for me. Leadership to me is really about.
Oh, I think it's kind of about the environment you can create. And by that, I mean an environment people want to be in. And that's probably, I would say, three things. I'd say it's about having a shared purpose. It's about kind of being aligned the way, in terms of your value system, all of that. And then hopeful, optimistic. I still think the most critical component of a good leader is being an optimist, I think, because if you don't have that, how are you going to get people to kind of come along? I mean, I don't mean being stupid and unrealistic about what the challenges are, but just having that hopeful spirit, I think, is really, really important. People want to be around that. And because if you have that, then you're going to come up with solutions. You're going to make them feel some certainty about what that future looks like. And without that, the alternative isn't much fun. So.
Wow, that was brilliant, Pam. Give me those three again, because if anybody did not write it down, they have to write it down now.
If I can remember them, okay. No, I think one is just having a shared purpose, and then being aligned in terms of your values, the way you're, what's important to you, what's, your philosophy, all of that, and then the third is just kind of that hopeful spirit, that sense of optimism. And if you have that kind of an environment, it's where people want to be. It's why they show up. It's why they, people don't leave a company. Well, sometimes they do for money, unfortunately, but more often than not, they leave because of a manager or a leader or somebody that they're not getting something from that they would like to be getting. And, so I think, and sometimes a great leader can overcome the money thing, which is, it's very prevalent in our business. People leave for signing bonuses and stuff, and that's very discouraging for brokers, I know, and I feel for them, because that's, they take it very personally, but if they're not necessarily going to get what you gave them where they're going, and they'll figure it out at some point, maybe too late for you, but you just got to keep giving what you can give, and hopefully the good ones will recognize that and stick around. So
I think any broker that tries to compete on price, the splits or bonuses or any of that stuff, is a losing game for that broker. The winning formula, you just said it in a nutshell, it's the culture that you create. People will, they'll work for a paycheck, but they'll die for a cause. When a leader has a great vision and a great culture of the feeling, that's what attracts people. I must say this, and then we're going to go to the questions, is that I did a stint, Pam, years ago when I first got into speaking. Before I broke out on my own, I was working for Floyd Wickman, the SWAT Hogs program. And I took a 2-month sabbatical to go work for Chrysler. And they had this national training program for the summer of 2 months, and it was called Customer One. And one of and the reason why they did this, they were rolling out a new line of cars, and they wanted all the dealerships to be trained, so they hired 150 trainers. I was one of them. And what I learned there was that there's two types of customers. There's the external customer that's buying the car. Then there's the internal customer, which is for the owner of the store. That's the salespeople and the staff. And so brokers, their internal customer is the agent. And so that job for the leader is to create a culture for that customer, their internal customer, where you want to work there because of how it makes you feel. And I think that's the way to lead, in my opinion.
And I used to always ask top producers when I would go around and visit our member companies, why are you at this company? And almost invariably, the answer was the same. It was my manager, because even though I may be a great producer, I love that sanity check. I love knowing there's somebody who knows a little more than I do if I do need an answer. And I still think that's true. And I think in some of these large organizations, that doesn't happen. So it is culture, and it's that kind of leadership too that I think are missing components sometimes.
Awesome. All right, let's go to the questions. I think I stole some of the question time because I was having too much fun talking to you. So,
okay. We were having fun with you, having fun, both of you. We have a lot of questions, so I do want to be respectful of your time, Pam. So we're going to rapid fire through these if we can. Okay. Sure. Marilyn said, first of all, you don't look a day over fabulous, which I think we all deserve. My question is,
thank you, Marilyn, wherever you may be.
Her question is, what advice do you give to women being successful in 2026?
Just have faith in yourself and be yourself, and don't try to, being feminine and being authentic. You never can fail with that. You don't have to try to be the macho person. Sometimes when we're just assertive, we can be called aggressive. But I just think if it's okay to use we have skills that are just different from what men have: multitasking, nurturing. Take advantage of those. Those are just be yourself and have faith in your ability. And those are probably the most important things.
I love it. I think we covered this. What are your thoughts on the recent Compass deal? We covered that in the early, yes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but let's answer that. What is your thoughts?
it's going to be a different animal than anything Compass has done so far, because they're inheriting, for example, franchises, and franchise brokers don't really work it's the other way around. And so it's going to be a different mindset, I think, for, the leadership at Compass, because, they've got to, they've got to win those people over. It's a little different dynamic. So, but I also think you got a lot of brands, you got a lot of different, cultures there that are going to have to be commingled. And whenever that happens, there's opportunity. Some of those people might want to go somewhere else. There are going to be recruiting opportunities. They're going to be, and that's not to say they won't be successful. I think they will. So, but I just think that it's not going to be for everybody. So it's not like there's going to be this one huge company that's going to take over the universe. So I don't think anybody should be worried about that.
I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, Compass is an independent. Their culture is different from the franchisee culture, and so they're going to have some challenges there, I guess, with that. Growing pains, we should say. All right, Jules, go ahead. Next one.
Thank you. Patricia says, how do you know if you're with the right agency? What should you look for? What are red flags?
Well, Darryl kind of talked a little bit before about culture, and that's kind of this nebulous word, but I think when you have it, you feel it. And if you feel comfortable, if you feel like, you've got an affinity with the other agents in that company, when you go there and you feel like you can collaborate with them. And if you're going to be on, out of town for a weekend, you can trust somebody who's going to have your back to help you while you're gone. If you feel like the leadership is knowledgeable and people you can rely on and trust if you need advice, and that the tools are there, that they have good systems and tools that you can take advantage of. It's not just about the money. I mean, obviously money is important to everybody, but I do think people sometimes get too focused on that. I've seen so many agents look only at the split, and they don't pay any attention to everything that they're paying for or that the broker's paying for. They never really look at that. And then they go somewhere else and maybe they got a better split, but all of a sudden they're paying for all their marketing stuff or other things that were already paid for. And so at the end of the day, they're not really any better off. So I think you really have to weigh the non-tangibles as well as the dollars and cents.
Yeah, because if you
dollars, right?
Just to put a pin in that, if you're not sold, and if you take an agent who's passionate, loves their company, loves their broker, that's going to come through in their speaking when they're across from a seller on a listing appointment or when they're working with a buyer. So to me, that's more important than the money, because if you have that passion with the company that you're in partnership with, on a 70% split, for example, you'll make more money than if you had 100% and you hated your broker, because you're not going to want to work, you're not going to produce or whatever. So that's
brand matters, and I don't mean just big national brands. I mean, a lot of local brands have a lot of traction in their markets, and I know some agents think, I'm the brand and it's only about me, but it's really both, because if you have the choice between two great agents and one has a company name that you've heard of and that's been around for a while and one doesn't, you know who you're going to go with. So I think you really have to think about. I'll tell a quick story. I was at one of our conferences, and the top agent from a very large company was there, one of our members. And when they went around this large group, and they were all introducing themselves, he introduced himself and the name of his team, but he didn't mention his company name. And I asked him afterwards, I said, I was just curious why you didn't do that. And he kind of looked at me like, oh, I didn't think about that. And I said, but these are people from other parts of the country. They may not remember your name, but they would remember your company name, and they'd be able to find you more easily. And it just hadn't occurred to him. It wasn't like he was, so I just mentioned that. So
awesome.
Brilliant. Oh, Wilda says, I want to know how you keep yourself from jumping at every program out there because the focus is different today. There's a lot of
Yes.
shiny penny syndrome out there, right?
That is a very astute observation. Yes, you're right. You can't. I think you've got to be really discriminating about looking at and the thing is, no program is gonna it's not going to make or break you. It's still you. It's how you use it, and so you've got to really think. Again, think like your customer. What are they looking for? What are the voids that they're not getting? Is there, for example, in this new buyer agency environment that we're in now, if I've seen some of these and I don't keep up with it as much, you all would know better than I, but if there's like a kind of a dashboard technology product where you could your buyer could be able to access that and be able to see exactly what stage the inspection is in, or what the status of the mortgage loan is, or whatever those things might be, where you're giving them that control that we talked about. That might be something that if I were working with buyers, I'd probably be really interested in. So, I mean, I think you want to look at what they're looking for and what is going to satisfy them, not so much just what some good tech salesman person is telling you is important. So I don't know if that answers it, but think like the customer and that'll never steer you wrong.
Love it.
Love it.
Shelley, what should new agents be doing in year one that their 5 years from now self will thank them for?
Learn. Obviously, observe what the good agents are doing. I learned early in my career from a guy that when I look back on him, he was interesting. He wore these white shoes. He looked like some kind of con artist, but he was really a smart guy. I remember he was a speaker and I learned a lot from him. But I remember him saying, people like to be asked for help. And, they're flattered by that. So even if you have a busy agent in your office who, if you just say, could I buy you a cup of coffee and just have you tell me what I think people, they'll respond to that, so observe what good people are doing and go to the training sessions if they're offered, wherever they're offered by your company, by the board, whatever. And start with good habits, start with your database, keeping it, electronically, not with, little postcards or napkins scattered around. I mean, because as we said, if you think like Darryl was saying earlier, like a leader, and you start building that business from the ground up, then you're always going to have something you can sell later, which you won't have otherwise, because it's really it's not what's in your head, it's what you have on paper that you can, rely on.
That's what you're selling. Julie, I'm going to jump to some of these questions because I found it now, and because of the time.
Okay.
Tricia McGrath, best advice for a single, by choice, they're a single broker owner, so I guess they don't have a lot of agents. So,
well, if you're a single practitioner and you're doing it all, then everything we've talked about, you've got to be. And Darryl said it very well in the very beginning of the program. As an agent, any agent really is your business within the business. So you've got to think like a business owner as well as a sales professional, whatever. I think if that's what you want to do, then follow that path. I guess if you find that you're spending an inordinate amount of time on the administrative part as a sole practitioner, maybe you would be better off going somewhere else and just focusing on the sales part and not having to worry about that. But I think you have to make that decision for yourself. If it's working for you, then keep doing what you're doing,
I agree. It's a real challenge to be a single broker, to run the business and also be the sales professional. It's not easy. So, all right. So Beth Kinsella said, Pam, you've been a mentor to so many of us.
Hi, Beth.
Who is your greatest mentor or influence in real estate? It's a great question, Beth.
Oh gosh, I've had so many. I really have. I mentioned Wes Foster.
Yep.
Michael Saunders here in Sarasota, where I live, is another one.
All right, that's good.
Yeah,
It's all right.
I would
You'd
have
have,
to
you'd
at
have to,
least, yeah, there are really so many. Everybody, I've learned from so many people, and I've learned different things from different ones. So it's not any one person. It's sort of like an amalgamation.
got it. Now, KW Clinton wants to know, Pamela, do you know Jill Centaur?
I don't think so. That doesn't ring a bell, no.
All right. And how many months should you expect before you get? No. Do you anticipate? Yeah. No, Sham, we've already got that. Britannia, do you? Okay, Britannia, how do you rebound when you hit a slump for months and it seems everything you're doing isn't turning into viable business? The expectations are set, but 23 years of this passion isn't currently turning into profit, even as a problem solver and solution-focused broker. Wow. So bottom line is, how do you get out of a slump? You've got somebody with 23 years passionate about this business, but they just can't seem to get out of their slump.
Well, I think, some of it is positive self-talk, self-affirmation. You got to do a lot of that. Instead of beating yourself up, you got to, really say, here's what I'm good at. Am I maximizing that? So you got to do some of that. One of the things I try to do every morning, I still try to do this, is when I get up in the morning, what am I grateful for? Because gratitude has this way of releasing the good endorphins in your system and letting you start the way. So like, even if I got a great parking spot and I didn't have to walk a long way yesterday, whatever, little things. I guess the other thing is to do some try to look at, what's not working and why is it working? What am I doing differently today than maybe what I was doing before? And it may be nothing. Maybe you're doing everything right, and it's just a matter of timing, and it will break at some point. And it could be as simple as that. So that's why I say don't beat yourself up, because it could just be, sometimes we all go through those little periods where things aren't working as well, and it's nothing you're really doing. But if you do analyze it, if you think back to a time where things were really popping, is there something you maybe were doing at that point? And are you prospecting as much as you need to be doing? Sometimes we fall down on that, and I don't mean in the sense of cold calling, but just thinking about all the people out there, and just sort of. I mean, even today, I still get a lot of referrals because people know I know people in real estate. I did one yesterday, so it's just letting people know you're in the business, not so much. And the other thing, I know this is so very old school, everybody knows to do this, but instead of talking to people about, are you thinking about buying or selling or moving? Hey, do you have any friends or family that are thinking about doing anything? Just keep in mind, I'm in the business. I think you don't want to look desperate. You don't want to ever look, hungry that way. I would do it more in the sense, if you're talking to people, I was working with somebody on this, and talk about real estate. Tell people what's going on. Like I'm in Florida, and Florida's in some ways, some areas not as good of a market in a lot of ways. I happen to be, I think, in a pretty healthy market here, but I don't hear agents really interpreting the market that much. I mean, they'll send out stuff that give you the numbers. But if I were an agent, if you're at a party talking, and you just talk about, the business, say, well, what I'm really noticing is that we are seeing more buyers coming out. We're seeing sellers that have been sitting on the sideline, whatever that is, better than I what you're seeing, but talk about it. And then just by simply talking about it, people are going to think, oh, I know somebody that's looking, she might be somebody. So without really asking for the business, you're letting people know you're in the business, and you're showing your expertise. I'm a big fan of KCM, Keeping Current Matters. I think if you subscribe to that, you get a lot of great material that you can use at cocktail parties and things. And the more you just kind of talk about your expertise out there, the more I think you'll pick up leads, and where you don't have to be as, in your face asking for business.
And I think too, Pam, just to add on to that the mental state of sometimes when we get into a rut is we internalize it to the point where we judge ourselves like there's something wrong with me. And when you get to that place, then it's really bad. Like you have to not have your checkbook dictate your value and who you are as a human being. And that goes back to what you're saying about being positive as a leader, because if you start to do that, you're robbing yourself from the tools that you need to turn the breakdown into a breakthrough. So you've got to keep that positive mental, not internalize the rut that you're in that has to do with who you are as a human being.
And be around positive people. Don't hang out with people that, if they're in the same boat as you and they're crying woe, then that's not good. You need to be around. And maybe it's as simple as take a long weekend and go somewhere and forget about it. Just get out of it and have a little break. That could make all the difference too. So
here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you one other question, and gang, we're coming to the end now. So what I'd like you to do is, obviously Pam, even though she's retired, she's not. And so the fact that she spent this wonderful time with us, I'd like you to, in the chat, if you can tell her the difference that this might have made for you, any ahas that you got from this. Let's thank Pam through what you are walking away with in the chat. I'd appreciate you guys doing that. And Pat, while they're doing that, Pam, if we can, my question is, we didn't talk about this next level for you, like you're doing succession planning. Can you explain that a little bit more? Like what's that about and how you're approaching that?
Well, I don't have a lot of takers because I don't think people want to do it. I think, unfortunately, it's one of those. No, I mean, I have worked with some agents and brokers. With brokers, it's obviously getting them to think about, if they have someone in the family, is it the right person? Or if not, what is their plan? And that could be selling the company. It could be, there are a lot of different options. And then with agents, it's more really coming up with a plan, again, ideally 2 or 3 years before they're going to do something, with how they're going to sell their book of business and still, create some passive income for themselves for retirement. But a lot of people, again, they talk about it, but they don't seem to, and I'm not looking to do a lot of work. So, but if anybody has just a few questions on it, they just want to chat, I'm happy to do that anytime. So,
Awesome. Well, then I may be calling you.
Yeah, I'm Pam at PamO'Connor.com. It's really easy. So yeah,
there you go. Pam at PamO'Connor.com. Boy, how did you secure that domain, huh? I'm sure there's another Pam.
A long time ago. So if you have a name and you haven't tried that, check it out. It might still be available. You never know.
I try to get DarrylDavis.com and I waited till there's another speaker. He's African American with the same exact name. So sometimes people have confused me in the past with, that's not the guy we thought.
Well, there was a city councilwoman in Santa Monica, California with my same name, and she had it for a while, but then somehow it lapsed, and I
you scooped it up.
Scooped in and got it, yeah.
Well, Pam, this was incredible. This was so awesome. And thanks for letting us go over time here. So is there anything that you want to share that we didn't get to close this out?
No, I just thank you. And I'm looking at these sweet comments. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure. And I love everything Darryl does. And it's always so much fun to see him. So that was an extra treat. So thank you. And Julie and Sarah, I appreciate your help getting organized for this. So
thank you. You made a big difference today. And, again, on behalf of the industry, what you've contributed is just mind blowing. And, you're an inspiration for so many people. Truly you are. And I'm just not blowing smoke, including myself. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
I told my whole team, make sure you're on today's interview. Of all the interviews, you got to see Pam. So, and you did not let us down for sure. So,
well, thank you, Darryl. I appreciate the opportunity. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Awesome. All right. Well,
even though it was Friday 13th. So.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even address that.
Totally lucky. It was totally lucky for us.
Yes, totally lucky. Oh, and by the way, happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Same to you and your lovely wife. Thank you, Darryl.
Thank you, Pam. All right. We'll be in touch soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Go out there, make a difference. Remember, everybody watching, that you guys are essential workers and you make a difference in the world. So thanks again, Pam. I appreciate you.
Thanks. Take care.
Right. Bye-bye.